One of the most interesting aspects of Fear and Hunger is its locations. Every area tells its own unique story. In the first game, the caves, the mines, the thicket, and don't even get me started on Mahavre. And even in areas like these, you have even smaller areas that reside in these locations that tell their own story. Take the Temple of Torment in Mahavre, for example. The atmosphere you feel when you enter this temple is phenomenal, but we're not going to talk about any of these locations today. We're going back to Termina, and we're going to talk about this little apartment complex found in the back alleys of the city, the White Mold Apartments. The White Mold Apartments has a lot of story. Some of it is told, other things are shown. When we first enter the White Mold Apartments, the doors are locked behind us. We are stuck, and the only way out is exploring this filthy, mold-infested apartment complex. Like most people, you start exploring the first floor. If you do so, you'll find a master key to all the apartments. You can even enter the basement, where you'll find nothing in particular actually. The only thing of interest down in the basement is this one washing machine, which for some reason seems to be turned on, and has some bloodstains on the sides. We'll come back to this later. If you explore even more of the area up on the first floor, you'll find a TV that's turned on. If you check it out, you'll see a broadcast covering the gruesome news of the madman that killed 4 people living in this apartment complex. The one covering the story is Karen, one of the playable characters in Fear and Hunger 2 Termina. The only weird thing about this broadcast is that Karen has never been to Perheval before and has never covered a case like this. She even says it herself if you have her in your party. The reason for this is never explained, but I have 2 theories that might explain the reason for this broadcast. The first one is simply that the Karen we see in the broadcast is a doppelganger, just like the other ones we see in the game for other characters. The second theory is a little more interesting. The theory is that the developing machine god uses its powers to manifest this broadcast to guide you through the White Mold Apartments and informs you of what has happened here. The machine god is under creation at the moment you are at the apartments, but it might just have enough power to manipulate the TV and communicate to the player. The reason this is likely is because the machine god's powers include manipulations of communication and information. One thing we know for sure is that there's something really uncanny and creepy about this broadcast. But at the same time, it gives you important information that helps you put the pieces together to find out exactly what happened in this area. Since we now have the master key and some clues to go on, we start exploring the different floors. At the second floor, we find nothing in particular. There are multiple apartments, but every apartment seems to have been abandoned in an instance. It's as if all this white mold just suddenly one day covered everything in this building. We find one door that we can't unlock yet, but other than that, there's nothing of interest here. If we go up to the third floor, we'll find some more information that will help us find a way out of this place. If you have your talking board with you, you can go to the bathroom at the end and use it. A ghost will appear, and it's clear that she's one of the victims of the madman that killed 4 people in this building. She says that the madman is coming for us, which is scary in it of itself, but she also talks about how this madman is a servant of Sulfur. We'll come back to that shortly. Once you're done talking to her, you'll be ambushed by an enemy named Neighbor. These enemies can put up a real fight, so if you're not prepared, they can be a real hassle. It's interesting finding an enemy called Neighbor in this building. Is this one of the other people that previously lived in this building? Most likely it is actually a Moonscorch form of a previous tenant that lived in this apartment complex. Moonscorch creatures can be found all over Perheval and is the result of Rher's power, transforming people into horrid creatures of nightmares. After defeating the Neighbor, you'll find an apartment with a horse statue. This might be a BoJack Horseman reference. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. But you'll also find peculiar markings. A star constellation maybe? After looking through some constellations, the one that's the most familiar, almost one-to-one, is the Pegasus constellation, which makes sense since we have the horse statue in the apartment. So if you move the horse statue to the area where the floor is loose, you can fall down and end up in the apartment at the second floor, which previously was inaccessible. You'll find a sigil that seems unfamiliar. It's not one of the sigils of any known old gods, new gods, or even ascended gods. Reading the notes, you'll find descriptions of all the people the madman killed. And you'll also find out that this is part of a ritual. A ritual for Sulfur. The notes aren't possible to read after this. Since we talked with the ghost earlier, we can put 1 and 2 together and conclude that it is Sulfur it was supposed to say in the note. The sigil that we find these notes on is, of course, the sigil of Sulfur. Sulfur is a deity, a god that this madman worshipped, and it is because of this god that these 4 unfortunate people died. If you're not playing as Dan, he'll be sitting in a chair next to the sigil. He talks about how the sigil he found here is familiar, that he has seen this in his past. The reason for this is because his father-in-law experimented with rituals of this kind, and did in fact end up as a servant of Sulfur. The same thing happened with Dan's wife. You can actually meet them in other areas in Preheval. They're known as Needles and Stitches. To give a bit of context to this god, Sulfur, he's a god that feeds upon suffering and terror. His servant's mission is to create chaos amongst humankind. His servants usually have a bluish tint to them, and that is because they have been burning in the sulfur pits and have come back to our world as servants of Sulfur. To keep it simple, let's just say Sulfur is our world's Satan. As mentioned earlier, the star constellation that we found was a Pegasus, and this represents freedom, inspiration, and spiritual transcendence. Which in this case, if the horse statue is related to the madman, symbolizes some sort of spiritual transcendence. To become a servant of Sulfur, you'll be burning down in the sulfur pits, which the servants of Sulfur might think of as a sort of spiritual transcendence. At this point we can also start theorizing about why these apartments are filled from top to bottom in white mold. The white mold we see might actually just be Sulfur. Now let's get back to the part where we're trying to escape this apartment complex. The note mentions something about a ritual in the basement and the order of killings done to the victims. If we're able to find every apartment of the victims, we'll see apartment numbers at every apartment. Putting these numbers together in the order of the victims, we'll get a code. A code to the ritual in the basement. Since there's nothing more to explore in this apartment complex, we start heading back to the basement. Back to the washing machine. Interacting with the washing machine will give us an option to enter a code. Entering the code we figured out from the notes will make the washing machine completely stop. We can now open it and enter the washing machine. Doing so will show us what exactly this ritual was for. We enter a completely new dimension, a rare dimension. When we first enter, a menacing soundtrack starts playing. A mix of scary ambience, menacing screams, and loud noises. It's as if the soundtrack is a reflection of the madman himself. And we also have a personal theory that this whole dimension is a manifestation of the mind of the madman. Once we start exploring the rare dimension, we'll find some interesting things. The whole area's layout is almost identical to the original white mold apartments. The big difference being that the white mold is all just wood and metal. If we go up to the second floor, we'll find a horde of neighbors roaming the hallways. These are the main and only enemies we'll find in this dimension. If you're not prepared, you're going to have a hard time. I should probably just try to avoid as many of them as possible. If we manage to dodge or defeat the neighbors, we can try to enter what seems to be distorted versions of what used to be apartments. Now they seem more like jail cells. You'll also find beheaded people strapped to chairs, seemingly having their life energy drained from them. What exactly this is and the purpose of it, I have no idea. At first I thought it might be the 4 victims' bodies, but there actually seems to be 12 bodies in total strapped to chairs. In the White Mall apartments, there are 13 apartments in total. Could the killer potentially have kidnapped the other occupants after he killed his 4 victims? But if that's the case, are the neighbors just random characters and not Moonscorch occupants? It's hard to say. Whatever the case, whoever are strapped to these chairs seem to have their life force drained to empower another being, perhaps Sulfur. If we do manage to make our way to the 3rd floor, we can make our way to what once was the madman's apartment. The apartment is similar in structure as the original one in the White Mold apartments. It even has the sigil of the Sulfur god. Inside the apartment, we find an important item, an effigy meant for the Church of Allmere. Once we obtain this item, we have managed to do what we came here for. You can either make your way back to the White Mold apartments through the washing machine hole, or if you have the Golden Gates perk from Rher, you can enter the Golden Gates and enter another rare dimension with your own nightmares. If you go back to the White Mold apartments through the washing machine and end up back at the main entrance, the main door seemingly just unlocks, and you're free to explore the city of Prehevel. You did it. You crawled through an alternate hellish dimension, obtained an effigy, and managed to survive another day. One question is still left unanswered though. Who was the madman, and what happened to him? It's hard to say, as there aren't that many servants of Sulfur we see in this game. A theory some people have is that the janitor we see in the beginning of the game is the madman behind the killings. I don't see that much evidence of this, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless. If it's not the janitor, we might never actually find out who or where this madman is today. Maybe he's burning in the sulfur pits. Maybe he'll come back in our way sometime. I guess we'll have to wait. All we know for certain is that he managed to complete the sulfur ritual, so maybe his true plans are yet to be revealed. I love that everything I just explained today of lore, information and gameplay is all centralized in one small apartment complex, a seemingly abandoned mundane building with such a fantastic little horror story. Depending on how you play the game, this is also probably the first time Sulfur is actually mentioned. Which, if you played Fear and Hunger 2 Termina, you'll know just how important this god actually is. And that's pretty much it with the White Mold apartments in Fear and Hunger 2. It's one of my favorite areas, and I thought I would share this area with people who might have not played the games themselves before. Or for people who just want this section of the game explained to them in such a way that they get every bit of information they might have missed. If you have some theories yourself about the madman who killed these 4 people in the apartment complex, let me know down in the comments. Do you think it's the janitor or do you think someone else? Let me know. And if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and also drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.